Previously, our protagonist was reborn in another world as Pastry. He got a cheat skill that allows him to copy anything in this world, even an injury. So with that copy power he made a portrait business and successfully set up his first matchmaking between Petra and Squale, but some people who want to stir things up tried to kidnap the bride. But they accidentally kidnapped her twin sister Licorice along with Pastry, so Pastry saves the day with his father and saved Licorice. So Margrave Huberek sets up the marriage of his two daughters on the same day, and that's how our boy Pastry got engaged to Licorice, Margrave Huberek's youngest daughter, but after a few days. Pastry received an invitation from Countess Redes to a tea party, so Margrave Huberek sent Licorice to stay with Pastry at his home for a few days. So, let's continue with the story. Lumi brought this news to Mark about Pastry's fiancée, but Mark already knew about her, but Lumi had heard Pastry got engaged to an older and a sexy woman. But the reality was the complete opposite. Pastry took Licorice to his kitchen to show her how he makes sweets, but for a few moments the scene shifts to Margrave Huberek. His aide was confused that Margrave sent out his daughter to Pastry, so Donikel tells him he noticed that Countess Redes had set her sights on Pastry because she realized his potential. And for that she even invited Pastry to a tea party, so he wanted to prevent Redes from doting on Pastry. But more importantly he wanted to send Licorice to a safe place away from the war that could break out between their neighboring noble, then back to our boy Pastry. He was showing Licorice the gift he's making to take to the tea party, and the sweet aroma had filled the room that impressed Licorice. Then after it was finished, Pastry served it out and made different types of candies, and Licorice seemed to fall for him even more, but there were some peeking audience keeping an eye on him, Agnes, Josephine. And Lumi wanted to see Pastry getting aggressive on Licorice and making some moves on her, but Pastry was focused on his work and made a traditional candy apple for Licorice. But Pastry knew about the audience that were keeping an eye on him, so after busting them, Agnes and Josephine escape in a hurry, leaving only Mark and Lumi behind to blame. So for punishment Pastry didn't let them have the new candy he made. As for the main subject, the tea party, Casserole appointed Nicole as Pastry and Licorice's bodyguard because this tea ceremony is for youngsters and also serves as a matchmaking party. So Pastry and Licorice gets to the party but saw the portrait he made for Countess was on the display, so Pastry thought something fishy was going on. Then their Khotan comes to welcome them on behalf of Countess Redes and Pastry knew they were up to something. Pastry introduced Licorice to him. So Khotan introduced the new couple to every noble who attended the party, and with this opportunity, Pastry brings out the candy he made and served to everyone. And every noble who tasted it found it delicious, so Khotan gave it a try and got flushed from its sweetness, and tea makes it even more delicious. Pastry announced he would like to give them more by traveling merchants only if merchants don't have to pay taxes just to bring in small jars of candies to them. Countess Redes heard it and took her interest to talk more about this business, so she invited Pastry to a private place to discuss it further. She gives Khotan a signal and leaves. There, Countess Redes gets right on the point to know about Pastry's endgame, so he just casually offers those candies to her and she understands his new business idea. Pastry tells her the recipe is just simple, sugar, water, and honey and he wants to make all the ingredients on his village, which completely caught her off guard. Then Pastry tells her he wants to gain access to her harbor for his business. So Countess Redes began to think that Pastry's true goal is to start this business himself, so for now she gives her permission and thought she could have him wrapped around her finger in the future. With this, as for Licorice, she overheard Khotan talking about Pastry and his rising social status, so Khotan thinks Pastry might have a few girls as his lovers in the near future. Which upsets Licorice, so Sarah and Nicole told her to ignore their words, but the entire room was praising only Pastry, so she got really down and thought of taking a walk. But outside of the room Pastry and Redes were coming and she brought up Licorice. She teases Pastry that he loves her and took Pastry in her arms and refuses to leave him until he confesses that he loves Licorice. But right there Licorice comes and took the situation wrongly and runs away, so far Countess got a sweet success in her plan. Licorice was depressed in the garden, so Pastry tried to comfort her and tells her it was just Redes always messing around with him, but her real concerns weren't that. She told her what she heard in the hall and started to think, what if someone much prettier comes into Pastry's life and Pastry accepts her. Licorice tells him she wanted to be bold like her sister. But their Pastry tells her he only has eyes for her and no one else. He tells her to wait for a bit and leaves using his teleport, and meanwhile Redes sure is having fun in the party. Then after some time, Pastry returns and brought another candy apple for her, but this one is a bit different and special that Pastry made only for her. Licorice took a bite of it and realized his love and remembers the time they spent it together were the proof of his love, and after that Licorice felt much better. They're sweet in that moment, both were about to have their first kiss, but Sarah and Nicole interrupted them. Nicole started to tease Pastry for being so bold to bring the apple candy to make a move on Licorice, so Pastry decided to triple his work in the office as a punishment. Then they returned home and Agnes gave Pastry a hug attack, after which Pastry wanted to relax from all this work, so Faye gave him some tea to relax. Their Faye saw the wrapping paper that Pastry used to wrap the candies that he delivered to nobles, but he added some spices in that paper. That is to print the moment Reedes hugged him in every wrapping paper to screw up with Reedes, and Reedes was boiling up with rage because of what Pastry did. The rumors spreaded around that she liked young dudes, so many nobles started to send her marriage proposals of their young children, and all proposals are under the age of 10. So now after screwing up with Reedes, Pastry has decided to bring in some goat and chicken to have milk and eggs to make different types of sweet, and as for sugar, he made a juicer to extract the sugarcane juice, but his idea didn't work out this time. So Licorice tells him about the juicer used in wine, so Pastry thought of purchasing that juicer and wanted to discuss it with his father. But the bad news had arrived, because the Huberek is now on the verge of going to war since their neighboring nobleman has assembled their army to invade Margrave Huberek's territory. So with that our another 2 episode comes to an end, but please stay tuned to watch more of this anime on my channel. Take care.